Good evening. I'd like to call the council as a whole committee to order. We have with us tonight in chambers Councilor Di Natale, Councilor Caddy, Councilor Tran, Councilor DiMartino, Councilor Joseph, Councilor Solomito, Councilor Starr, Councilor Conry, myself, Councilor Hay. We have three departments on the agenda this evening: Fire, Law, and Human Resources. Councilors, it will be up to you, the procedure that we use. If you want me to read the department and then just the bottom line numbers, we can do that. Or if you want all of the numbers read out, we can do that also. Does anybody have any preference? Councilor Di Natale.
Mr. President, I think reading just the bottom line number is adequate, at least for me, and also if any counselor has any recommendations on further cuts beyond the proposal, we should have, like last time, and have a rolling list to discuss at the final meeting.
I would agree with that.
Thank you.
Anything else, councilors? We will go forward and we will start with the fire department on pages 23 and 24. Okay, we start with the fire department. Grand total of $4,999,708. Chief?
Good evening, councilors. Mr. President, if I could, I'd just like to make some clarifications on this page. I'm sure, as most of you know, there's been a number of budgets submitted to the mayor since January, and a number have come back. And just for clarification purposes, at the top of this page on the FY10, which is our current fiscal year, that number should read $5,736,478.
Is that in replacing the $5,505,133?
That's correct. That is our current updated budget of what we have.
Could you read that? Give it.
$5,736,478.
Thank you, Chief.
And also on FY08 should read $6,426,725. Also on page 23, under the notes, under lieutenants, it says one position left vacant, 3 demotions. That is incorrect. There would be one position left open and 7 demotions. And also, you can see above that 4 demotions in the captains for a total of 11 demotions. Also, on the firefighters, it says 3 positions left vacant since 08. That should be 4 positions vacant since 09, and possibly 5 or 6 layoffs. It depends if another person retires and so on. So that should be 5 positions left vacant and 4 layoffs, or 4 positions left vacant and 6 layoffs, depending on which way. This budget currently, as it stands, has 62 uniform sworn positions in it, down from 72 of our current budget. It also, as I said, involves 11 demotions and leaving 1 position open. And under this proposal, we would be permanently closing Engine 1 at Summer Street, and also closing at Claiborne Station and moving Engine 2 downtown to headquarters. We would hope under this budget we would be able to maintain 11 firefighters on duty, but that remains to be seen because there's not much overtime in here. Summer Street and Oak Hill would both be closed. Engine 1 would be put out of service, and those would be redeployed.
Questions or comments from the councilors? Councilor Conry.
Chief, I have more of a concern, and I'm not pointing at Councilor Joseph's ward. I have a real concern that you're going to have to take Engine 1 out of service. there is a pressing concern that engine 2 is going to be taken out of service and brought downtown.
It will not be taken out of service, council, but it'll run out of headquarters.
Okay. Understood. How do you really believe you can cover the western section of the city if that engine is brought downtown?
There's a number of logistical problems, Councilor, with taking the third engine out. Number one, engine 1 down in Summer Street runs on about 1,300 emergency responses a year. Those calls are all going to have to be picked up by engine 4 at headquarters on single engine dispatches, which are car fires, brush fires, hazmat incidents, all them various type of incidents. On fire calls where we send 2 engines on a ladder, it'll only be engine 4 at headquarters and engine 2 at Oak Hill left. So those are the only 2 engines that will be able to go, so obviously they have to go. So those 1,300 runs are going to be picked up by engine 4 at headquarters. It already does almost 1,700 runs a year. So that truck is going to either be covering its own calls or covering engine 1's area a great part of the time. That means we cannot leave the center of the city for any length of time where the biggest population is without an engine. So engine 2 will be running up and down River Street. That's the first problem. And this doesn't include, when I talk about a run, I think I should be clear, I'm not talking about when they're out building on inspections, training, fire prevention, fire education. This is strictly when they're on emergency calls. The second problem is, with engine 4 so busy down here, it's imperative, when our crews up there at Oak Hill or Summer Street go in to fight a fire, they've only got 3 people on that truck. They should have 4. They go into a building and stretch a line and get in there. It is critical that they get a water supply from the second engine coming in and they get venting from the ladder truck. We're not going to be able to guarantee that's happening anymore. We're only going to have 2 engines on a ladder with 11 people. Of those 11 people, 2 of them are assigned the ambulance duty. So they're going to be running 11 to the hospital and back, and they run probably 5 to 6 transports a day. So there'll be a considerable amount of the day, not quite half, but a little less, that they will be tied up on other issues. So we're really talking about 9 people. We're running our tower ladder with 2 people, and we're running our engines with 3. Those companies all should have 4 people on. So, Council, I think everyone in this room knows, for 5 years we've been cutting, and our goal has been to keep 3 engines on a ladder in our 3 stations. That's how it works. You go in, you make a quick attack, and try to keep it to the room of origin, or the kitchen fire in the cabinets, or the bedroom fire on the bed, or under the carpet. We just cannot do that. We physically cannot do that. As it is now, we're waiting on mutual aid companies to come in here to cover our city on a regular basis and to back us up. We've had a number of fires just recently in Green Street, and during the snowstorm was an example. We had 14 people on duty that night, and the fire got beyond us in a hurry, and we lost the top floor of that building in the attic because we were waiting for backup crews and other people to come in from other communities. That happened on Pratt Street a few months ago, same situation. Our guys are in the building, we had to go back up, nobody did get in trouble until the Leominster or Lunenburg counties get here. So as much as I do not want to do this, Councilor, it's not the best firefighting practices, it's not the best tactics and strategy, but between running engine 2 up and down River Street, cover all these calls and cover the areas down here, and not having enough people guaranteed to back up those 3 guys in Plymouth, I don't feel that it's in the best interest of our people to operate that manner. We'll have 11 people, we'll leave headquarters together, and we'll do the best we can with the staffing we have.
How many runs do you have out of Oak Hill, engine 2?
Engine 2 is about the same, maybe a little more. I think last year, engine 2 was just about 1,300 calls. They were just, they're about the same as engine 1. They're almost identical, most of the trucks.
I know that we have to talk about dollars and cents, but, you know, it doesn't make sense, I don't think, to close these stations, and somehow we need to find a way, if we have to cut somewhere else, to protect the people of this city. We are going to have a tragedy. And you know what? They're going to be pointing the finger at the elected officials. We've been lucky so far, but we're going to endanger the firefighters and we're going to endanger the people of Fitchburg if we continually cut the fire department budget or the police department budget. Thank you.
Councilor, could I just add one thing also in this budget from some changes that were made Friday? I don't even have enough offices to have one office. Not a company officer. These are our people that have studied every 3 years, 1,600 hours. There are people that have additional duties, training, fire prevention, inspections. They continually get in the books and stay up to date. It's like every 3 years going for a college degree. And with this budget, I've been reduced to 8 company officers when I need 12. So that's another problem that's in this budget right now.
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, how many firefighters would you need to keep both stations open, minimum? Above what you have budgeted here, how many would you need to keep both open?
We would need the 10 back. We need to get back to the 72 with I projected at least a $300,000 overtime.
And would all those 10 firefighters be new hires?
No. We'd be preventing 5 layoffs and maybe 5 new hires.
Do we have any idea how much that would cost? I mean, a new hire is how much?
A new hire is cheap because of the changes we
Right.
made. I think it's about $4,200 a year, including everything.
42,000 a year?
42,000, excuse me.
And that would be 5 of them?
There'd be 5. And then the other firefighters, some of these firefighters laid off have got, I think, 6 or 7 years on the job. So it'd probably be around $350,000 for those 5 jobs. And then we need an increase in the overtime account.
So that would be almost $600,000.
It's basically where we are today. We're actually at 5.7, but we had given a proposal back a few weeks ago to call for about a $5.6 million budget, but there was some concessions asked of the union that they're considering.
I ask this because Councilor Conley raised an excellent point. We have a budget before us that we cannot rubber stamp. We cannot just think that the office of the mayor has effectively allocated every dollar, because if we recommend cuts in other departments, you get the "we don't want to hurt the department head's feelings" comments. We're closing 2 satellite stations that together serve 2,600 calls a year. The police is just as bad. We're going to have to cut elsewhere in this budget. I have a list of cuts that I'd like to propose throughout this session that totals $700,000. I didn't get anywhere with my proposals last year, and I'm going to do it again this year. And the argument has always been, if we cut and move it to a place that we know they'll spend it, we won't have a surplus. Fitchburg has had a surplus every year for the last 4 years, $3.5 million. In a time like this, where the departments like the fire and police are at levels that you could say they're non-existent because they can't be used effectively, instead of going for that $1 million surplus every year, we should be going for maybe $300,000 or $400,000. We have to be stingy now. The other point I wanted to make, and I know this is not a popular thing to say, but it catches my eye once again, even though I understand the fire department has made concessions, is 25% of the operating budget is in benefits and stipends, $1.2 million. So the 600 grand that the chief just said would be needed to bring us back to the level we need to be, at a minimum, if that line item was reduced in half, we would bring those 14 firefighters. We'd have 14 firefighters to bring back. And this goes for everybody else. You got a salary, you got overtime, you've got health insurance, you've got pension. I don't know what the rest of this stuff is for. But again, my goal is to bring these guys back online. Some of these guys are friends of mine. I mean, in times like this, I can't handle seeing that number in any department. So I'm not asking for a comment. I'm just making that statement that catches my eye. How many calls, Chief, did the fire department have last year? I forget the report, or this year, if you will.
Close to 9,000.
9,000 calls, and
calendar year 08.
And do we have any idea this year so far, or?
We're about on the same amount, yeah.
And what communities have told us that they're not helping us anymore?
One community told us that they would not send their ladder truck to cover us anymore, and that was about a year ago.
What community is that?
That was Westminster.
Westminster?
Yeah, so in the meantime, we've Lunenburg bought a ladder truck, and we either use Leominster now that comes during short-term incidents, and we do the same for them. We put out one ladder truck on the city line, and it'll respond both ways. If it's going to be a lengthy time, we bring in Lunenburg's ladder.
Okay, and the other thing I wanted to bring up is that the fire department budget is one of the few budgets in this city that what they get, they spend, which leads me to believe they're bare bones. They don't have any room to not spend anything. That's how bad they are. And I see here that we're going to fund 200 grand for overtime. You can guarantee 100% they'll be back for free cash next year. That is not going to be enough. It wasn't enough this year, it wasn't enough last year, it's not going to be enough the next year. This will guaranteed be a free cash request. So that's another issue I have with this. Thank you.
Councilor Tran.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, thank you for joining us tonight. My first question has to do with the ambulance. How are we doing with that service?
It's doing very good. You guys have done a good job with that. That's another point that we've taken on. In 2007, that wasn't one of our duties to transport people to the hospital. But we have another year in the contract. This year, we have $400,000. 2010, we have a contract with MedStar to get another guaranteed $400,000 to pay for 7, 8 firefighter salaries. And it's worked out very well. It's using a rescue not only to make that money to retain some firefighters, it's cut down on Engine 4's medical runs in the downtown district. We'll send 2 ambulances on critical care calls rather than a fire engine in the ambulance. So that's helped a lot. It's brought Engine 4's medical runs down to about 200 medical runs, and they do almost 1,700 calls on that truck. So it's been very good. It's worked out very well. The guys have done a great job.
That is excellent to hear. So I'm assuming that the reduction in the budget is not going to have any effect on that service?
We hope not. You know, I think that if, I can't tell you at this time, Council. I think that it needs to go back to a union negotiation for another year. But as far as MedStar is concerned, we're signed into another year in the contract.
Now, the anticipation of closing 2 stations, the summer and moving one of the engine away from the Oak Hill station, and because of, you know, Fitchburg terrain being the second hilliest city, are we opening ourselves to any liability if we can't provide the service, adequate service?
It's a good question. I'll raise that with the city solicitor. There's also issues of insurance premiums. And it's not only, as you made a good point, Council, the hilly sections of the city, but we're a 28 square mile city. We're not an Everett or Malden that's 3 square miles and 40,000. You know, we're 40,000 people spread out over 28 square miles. So it's long runs. I will question the city solicitor on that and ask that question.
Can you elaborate on the insurance premium that you just touched upon?
The ISO is the insurance service offices that determines insurance premiums that people pay. We've done pretty good in, I think it was 2004, we went, it's a rating schedule of 1 to 10. We were a 3, a rating 3. 1 is being the best. We were a 3, and I think in 2004 we got to a 2. There's only 9 communities in Massachusetts in a 2, and there's only 1 in a 1, and that's Cambridge. So that determines what the premiums people pay on their fire insurance. And it depends on water usage, response by fire department, fire stations, how close to the fire station. It's a whole formula. The ISO comes in here and does a regrading every 10 years. So there's we're at a 2 now, which is, we'll never get to a 1. We won't be at Cambridge, unfortunately. But there's a possibility that, you know, they will come in here and review, and I talked to them actually, we closed ladder 2 in Cleveland. That didn't have effect at that time, but they will come back in here if we close these stations, they'll regrade us. So there's a potential that the insurance premiums could go up.
So to make it short, if we, according to this budget, which is not providing the adequate service to the residents of Fitchburg, the taxpayers, the homeowners, may see their homeowners' insurance premiums
It is
go
a
up.
possibility. I can't guarantee that tonight because it's up to the ISO for us to notify after our changes and they come in and review it. It's a possibility.
Now, if this budget goes through and we're going down to 62 uniforms, what is the feasibility of getting volunteers to help out?
Council, we have volunteers in our FEMA, emergency management, that come out and help pump cellars, set up lights. We actually have some interns now. But the liability to the city to bring on volunteers, you have to train them. I mean, small towns can't even get volunteers anymore. It's a lot of training, a lot of dedication. You have to go through the fire academy. And to have them in, not trained, not professionally educated in the field of professional firefighting, I wouldn't be in favor of it. There's certain jobs they can do, and we have them do those jobs at this time. But to bring in volunteers, I think you've seen articles in the paper, the towns are having difficulty getting people to come to the trainings at night, weekends. There's a lot that's involved there between medical, firefighting, hazmat, building codes, all the things that a firefighter has to know. That this is our annual training manual, and our people train daily. This tells us every day of training in our department for the whole year, 2009. And that's an average of 6 to 7 hours a day of training, inspections, maintenance of their equipment. That's a lot to ask a volunteer to come up to speed and do those kind of things. Okay.
Chief, I share the same stance as my my fellow council at large, Councilor Di Natale, on the benefits and stipends. And one number that sticks out like a sore thumb is the clothing allowance. Every year we allocate hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to this line item. What kind of clothing do you buy with that money?
It's actually attached to the contract. I don't have it with me.
Right, I understand it's part of the contract.
It's no, but that's not the issue. The issue is that it's a book and it's clothing and cleaning allowance. Firefighters' gear, and I can send you a copy of what the manual calls for. It calls for their dress uniforms, their turnout helmets, their turnout coats, pants. I think a new set of turnouts now must go a couple grand, I guess, at least. They turn them over every few years. Their dress uniforms, their clothes they work out in as doing their exercises to stay in shape. Every piece of clothing that's required, right down to their T-shirts, is included in that. And there's a yearly inspection to make sure that they are kept up to date on that. That doesn't include cleaning uniforms. They can go get the cleaners, or you have your wife do it. There's some nasty stuff, especially on the medical guys. When they get vomited on or bled on or whatever things that they run into, and that's the expense end of that. And I can send you a copy of the clothing committee that it's thousands of dollars required.
Well, I appreciate the explanation, because I'm sure that a lot of people at home are wondering the same thing.
And there's other things, Council, like Nomex hoods, Nomex gloves. There's a number of items that they're required to purchase and wear.
For conclusion, Chief, I wholeheartedly do not agree that 62 is the correct number for the city. We need more, and I can guarantee you that I will work with my colleagues to at least add a few more uniforms to that number, because that is a very low number, and the people of this city should have a better service from a high number of uniforms than what we're seeing in this budget.
I think there's one thing that's important to note, that out of right now, we have 68 people on the force right now at this moment, and out of those, 65 of them are assigned to shifts. They're on shift duties, and they go up and down. It's 3 people that aren't assigned to that work, and that's myself and 2 people in fire protection. Every other member of our department goes out the door on emergencies and
Thank you, Chief.
Councilor Salamito.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chief, you said that outside of you and 2 other people, everybody else goes out on a shift, correct? Now, is that on the, use the term, on the street?
Yes, they are assigned as a part of our 14 on-duty people that's assigned to an engine company or a company on the ambulance.
Where do the dispatchers fit in?
The dispatcher, there's 1 dispatcher per shift. He's the 50. So there's 14 line people, and there's 1 dispatcher per shift.
Now, I haven't been into the department that often, but when I went in during the ice storm quite a bit, and for other reasons, it seems like there's more than 1 officer in that dispatch room. I mean,
Probably during the storm we did. We had, round the clock, we had Lieutenant DeJean, who was our supervisor, was in the room, and we hired a second dispatcher throughout that whole incident. And there was times, actually, Counselor, that we had other people jump in, that if there was a truck in the station, the dispatcher needed help, he got on the intercom and said, give me some help in here, because
Okay.
we were answering phone calls on outages, and you guys know.
What is the realistic possibility of combining, here's a dirty word, combining police and fire dispatching? I'm not trying to tell a police chief or fire chief how to run an engine and where to put it, because that's way beyond, and I wouldn't, my expertise at all. But my question is dispatching. In the time, if we're really bare bones, can the police and fire get together and have maybe one firefighter and one police officer rather than two police? And I know that's a police question maybe, but is this not the time to really think about combining dispatching?
So I can tell you, during February, March, we had those discussions extensively. Chief Lamar and myself met on a number of occasions. We looked at that. He knows that his offices in that room are very busy all the time over at the police department, especially I think he said till 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
or better.
Right.
6 in the morning. Well, our dispatches are extremely busy, almost the same time, maybe 8 o'clock at night, especially during the day where Lieutenant DeJean jumps in and answers, or we have other people come in the room when it gets busy, when we get a fire or accidents and the workload picks up. We found that in the short, it's probably something we're going to look at in the future, but in the short term, it's still going to require maybe even 4 dispatches during the day to handle both of us, and 3 at night. In our department in particular, we count that person as part of our daily manual. So, and I'll give you an example. We just had a firefighter that had a leg injury. He was going to be out extensively. He was a normal, healthy firefighter. He went in that room, didn't look out sick. An able-bodied firefighter came out of the room and went on shift. Otherwise, the civilians or any other combination, we're paying overtime. And that's been done by all ranks in our department. Lieutenants have gone in there, deputy chiefs have gone in there, when they're sick or injured, and worked in the room and let the able-bodied person come out and save the city money. I can tell you that as late as yesterday afternoon, we are involved in a regional dispatch study, which we've applied for a grant with 13 other communities, Sterling, Holden, Lunenburg, West Boylston. There's 13 of us, and we've met 3 times. We've written a grant that's been applied for through the state 911, and there'll be a study performed starting, we're hoping in August, for a regional dispatch center. And I also attended a meeting, the same type of situations going on in Ashland. So we are looking out to the regional type dispatch centers that will be run by either fire or police. I think you know through the years the issues of who takes precedence if you get busy. And in our business now, our fire dispatches are also medical dispatches. So when a medical call gets kicked to us, we might have to go back and talk someone through CPR or a choking situation. So that's on us. The police at this time don't have the people trained for that level. We do. So that's another thing that we perform in our room. It's under our responsibility to fire and medical.
What do you think is the more likely possibility, regional dispatching or police and fire within Fitchburg
From
combined?
communities that I talk to, in most communities our size operate just the way we do. Honestly, the communities of 40,000, 45,000, they have police, either civilians or police doing the 911 kick in the back of the fire all the time. It's like apples and oranges, it's all the time. I would think the more likely scenario, and you never like to look at these things as cost savings because it's too important to life safety. I would think that a regional approach may work better for us down the road and try to combine. Honestly, I think, and, I have to talk to Chief Lamar on his end. I think the way we do it on our side now is very cost effective.
And the very last question, Chief. If you were to get 10, 9, or 8 officers back, would they go as firefighters, or do you anticipate promotions? Because I think that's a kind of a sore spot.
The number of officers is dictated by the number of companies and service. I feel strongly that every company has to have an officer on. He's a firefighter, he does all the duties, and I can demonstrate a little more, Counselor, that this is the civil service essential duties of a firefighter. It's 5.5, 6 pages, what a firefighter does. This is the essential duties of a lieutenant. All the jobs that are here for this lieutenant. But in addition, this lieutenant has responsibilities and duties of training, fire inspection, fire report writing, responsible for a $500 or $1 million fire truck and the crew that's on it, and any other responsibility as far as violations or issuing of those type of works. That's their job, that's their job description. That's what they're paid, the extra $6,000 or $6,500 a year. And I can go all the way up to captains and additional administrative duties, the deputy chiefs, all the same duties as a firefighter, only they take on more responsibilities and done it, especially when you get to the deputy level where they are strictly management people dealing with personnel issues and that nature. They're on the street, they're on one. The deputies themselves go on almost 1,300 emergency calls a year.
Do you have captains anticipated right now for your budget?
The budget that I submitted did, this budget, they came out with numbers.
I have no clue. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Counselor Conry.
Yes, I'd like to revisit the mutual aid issue, Chief. How long is it going to be, do you think, before the surrounding communities that belong to the Mid-State Mutual Aid Association say to Fitchburg, wait a minute, we fully funded our budget, we've got to take care of our community, you know, we're going to have to cut back on responding to New York calls. How long do you think that'll be?
Council, as you know, I have a very close relationship with all the area chiefs. We meet frequently, probably a couple of 3 times a month because we work so closely together. Honestly, I don't think fire chiefs would ever stop calling, sending help to us for a fire. I think the issue is going to be with covering our stations. That's where it's going to be. So we're in a position where our trucks are tied up, and even if we have these companies in a fire scene, that our stations are empty, we get the simultaneous emergency, which we do frequently. That's where the problem is.
But we're going to be in a position probably that we're not going to be able to help out other communities as much as we have in the past.
With 2 engines and a ladder, I won't be able to send one. I'll have 3 engines to another city.
And I would assume then that there is a relationship with other fire departments, that we do have a responsibility under the Mid-State Mutual Aid Contract Agreement?
We do. And the area chiefs have talked to me extensively about this, and until it happens, I have an answer for it.
I'd like to go back to the demotion issue. Demoting the captains, I don't think it's very clear in the sheets that have been presented to the council that if you demote the captains to lieutenants, you're going to have to demote lieutenants to firefighters, and then you're going to have to lay off firefighters. Am I correct?
Yes, and we'll then have not enough company officers, so firefighters that are demoted probably going to have to do the same job with no pay.
I just wanted to make that clear so that everybody understood.
Council, I can tell you that since Monday, I've had discussions with the mayor on this, went through discussions, and we spoke to the union about it today, and I believe that there's going to be some changes to something with the office that they've asked.
My final question is probably not a very popular one, but what will happen if the fire department went to 12-hour shifts instead of 24-hour shifts? Would that save any money, or would that increase the budget?
It's still 42 hours a week, Council. We're still the same amount of people, we cover the same amount of hours, just on different shifts. It doesn't have an effect on this budget.
It wouldn't have effect on overtime.
We still need to have the number of people to manage the same equipment, the same number of people managing the same number of equipment, the same hours a week.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Caddy.
Chief, obviously, I'm pretty concerned about closing Claygon. I'm going to ask you several questions all at once, and you'll understand why, I'm sure. In the meantime, I want everyone to try to think response times. One in particular, how long would it take to go from Central to Rockland Street in Claygon? How long would it take to get to Shea and Cathy Street? How long would it get to 1150 Westminster Hill Road? And how long would it take to get to Cocoa Keys? Chief, I do want those questions answered, but before I have those answered, what's the desired response time to a fire?
The desired response time under National Fire Protection 1710, which I refer to frequently, is a study that was done extensively over a 10-year period. for fire medical response. The first arriving 4-person crew should be to a fire between 3 to 5 minutes. The remaining full complement of 17 people should be arrive within 8 to 9 minutes. And it basically goes the same for medical, because when they did the studies on medical people, if someone's severely bleeding, stoppage of heart, not breathing, the first BLS crew should arrive within 3 to 5 minutes.
That was going to be my second question.
And the remaining ALS crew, which should be, it should total at least 4 people, should arrive within 8 to 9 minutes to get defibrillation going and drug administration monitoring.
So mimicking the response time to a fire, 3 to 5 and 8 to 9.
Correct.
So now,
And the fire end is determined on fire development, the number of time it takes a room to fully evolve, flash over, and start extending to other rooms in the house, other floors, neighboring houses. And the same goes for medical reasons. You only can bleed out, it only takes you so long to bleed out, it only takes you so long for your heart to stop and not breathing before you can.
I know that a lot of people complain about seeing fire trucks out on accident calls or different types of calls other than fires, but what actually you're doing is you're using those fire engines as first responders. It's a medical necessity.
Correct. In the Engine 1 district, there is no ambulance in that station, so those 3 EMTs are the first basic people to arrive within 3 to 5 minutes. The medic truck comes out of Central. In Oak Hill, they do have a medic truck. However, they have a lot of 3-deckers, they have a longer response time than West Fitchburg. The issue comes down, so, and we've seen it lately, Councilor, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that have health problems, that because of those health problems have weight problems. And you can't take 2 or 4 people to carry a large person down from the 2nd floor, 3rd floor, with monitoring equipment, with IVs in them, doing CPR. But further, I think there's a myth in the city, I was questioned about this by the Sentinel today. We do over 5,000 ambulance calls, medical calls in the city a year. And our engines and ladders last year went to 1,290 out of 5,000. Now, as I said earlier, our rescue picked up another number of those calls to go assist. But you don't expect to walk into a hospital emergency room with a heart attack and have 2 people work on you. We send those people for good reason, patient care. That's the only reason we send them. And we have to make sure we put the right amount of people with the right equipment at the scene in the right amount of time. Fire, medical, whatever the situation is.
I'm concerned about Summer Street closing, but I'm more concerned about Claygon, not because I'm closer to it, but it would be my belief that to get out to Cocoa Keys, it's a longer haul, much more time from Central than it is to go down and cover where the Summer Street Fire Station is covering. So to get back to my 4 questions, if people thought about it, how long would it take to get to Rockland Street? Any idea?
From
From
headquarters?
Central.
Yeah, on a good night, it's probably 9 to 10 minutes. I think we've got that study that
We have the study,
We've
but
got the study.
I forget the
Cocoa Key is
numbers.
an 8-minute run from Oak Hill, so add the 8 minutes.
I guess what I learned during that site committee was if you go to Cocoa Keys, it's a straight run on flat roads, no turns. You come out of Central and you go. If you had to get to Rockland Street, you have to weave your way in and out, up hills, sharp turns. So I kind of thought that Rockland Street would be about the same time as Cocoa Keys, even though it's a lot closer. How about 1150 Westminster Hill Road?
As I was walking in, Council, we just had a grill on fire on a porch at Colony Road. So that's a run.
What are we talking, time-wise?
Well, we're talking 7 to 8 minutes out of Oak Hill, so you're going to add 7 to 8, 9 minutes out of headquarters.
And then Shea and Cathy Street. So my point.
I think it should be also kept in mind, Council, that Engine 1, although they are a little closer, I agree, and when we do our prioritizing, Engine 1 sometimes will be sent to cover Oak Hill, but Engine 1 has the whole lower Market Street area, Meriden Street area, Meadowbrook Village, Leyte Road, all the way down to Airport Road, everything, a lot of automobile accidents on John Fitch Highway, and they also go first into a big portion of Lunenburg, as we give back our mutual aid to them for using them all the time.
Well, I think all the councilors are behind this. Closing the Claygon station in particular are going to have some risks. I understand what you're doing. You've got to make your men safe. I'm just hoping that we can find somehow to give you enough men to keep those stations open. Thank you.
Counselor Starr.
Thank you. When the new North Street Fire Station was built with the dispatch center, wasn't the original goal for that to be a multi-purpose dispatch area?
Yes, there's four dispatch positions in that room, and since then, with Homeland Security money, as you guys saw during the ice storm, we added a dispatch to our ELC downstairs.
I did have the opportunity to sit up there, actually, sitting with Eddie Suarez, who's back there, and you had at least 2 people constantly on the phone at all times. Of course, that was a unique situation. I was asking around, I know a lot of officers from South County and much smaller towns, and they use regional dispatch, and they not only use for police and fire, but they also use for DPW. Like Council Solomito asked you before, is that also a possibility?
That was
Because
part of our
DPW
discussions. I actually brought Chief Demora to our dispatch center. He was pretty impressed. He said he didn't see anything like that at all, so that has been part of our ongoing discussions. That, everything's being discussed at this point, Council.
So DPW would also
The
be...
mayor included DPW in that conversation.
Okay. Now, as far as mechanics, I imagine, I've seen the apparatus that you have. I imagine he's quite busy. What's the possibility of combining mechanics between the 3 departments?
I'd love to get him some help. We have 30 pieces of apparatus, and he also maintains all our saws and lights and generators and pumps, and he's extremely busy. I don't know what the situation is. I know there's one mechanic. I know that what we do is when he's on vacation or away and he's not available, we call one assist mechanic because it's kind of specialized. Not everybody works on aerial ladders or air packs. Barry's our mechanic's been with us for 32 years, 33 years, so he's got a lot of knowledge in that, in the specialized field of firefighting. If you're asking me, can I send him away for a day or somewhere to go somewhere else? My answer is no. I could use someone coming in. Matter of fact, our firefighters help him a lot when he has big jobs on the axles and transmissions. The guys go out there and help him.
I always appreciated the fire department.
We did have 2 mechanics at one time.
I always appreciated the job you guys did before, but having spent all the time I did down there during the ice storm, I absolutely developed a new appreciation. Actually, watching a lot of the inner workings was quite a learning experience. Thanks.
Counselor Joseph.
I guess for the first time in a lot of years, I'll probably be doing more listening than I will be speaking when it's the budget sessions this year, because I don't see the answers. The times are tough. Things are difficult. We can't manufacture money like the federal government does. We have to stick to a budget. So I don't have answers. I see that in the last few years, we've made some pretty loud statements about concessions and doing things differently. So there's been concessions, both voluntary and not voluntary, within the fire department, and I feel those, and I'm sure that your firefighters also feel those. My idea of what a fire department is supposed to do is not just contain a fire, but you're also supposed to go into a burning building and make sure that nobody's in there and make sure that you can save as much of that building as possible. But with these numbers, I don't see that happening. So I don't want it to be thought as indifference as to my silence, but I just don't have any answers. This is a budget that is devastating. This is a budget that is the sign of the times. There are going to be 11% of the people in the United States out of work. There's no money coming in, there's no money going out. So that you can't just make it so that we'll say, okay, City of Fitchburg, we have a priority for public safety. Let's just throw money at it and give us our police and fire. That's not, there's not money there to do that with. So as much as I want to have a station on Oak Hill and I want to have a station on Summer Street, without money, you can't do what you need to do. So if there's answers out there, I'm listening, because that's what I'm here for this next couple of weeks, because I don't see it. And I want to just let you know that I appreciate the job that you and your firefighters do for the city, and hopefully we can get out of this and do what's right for the citizens of Fitchburg.
Thank you, Councilor. And I don't think anybody has felt this more than our department. This budget passes as is. We've dropped in a very few years from 97 jobs to 62. That's pretty large reduction in force.
Counselor Di Natale.
Thank you, Chief. How many fires were there in 2008? Fire calls, just,
Look up for total responses, council, built
or-
fires and buildings, what are those?
any call that involved a fire?
Fires and buildings, I think, from the marshal's office, it's in the annual report, I believe it was approximately 250.
And then,
Fires and buildings, that's actual fires that was burning in the building.
and what about this year so far? Do we have any idea?
I don't have it with me.
No.
I believe it's running right on. I think I sent all the councils a chart from the 2007 state fire marshal figures.
You did,
It shows
I
us
did,
we
yeah.
continually at 15 from the state for a number of fires and buildings. We're right up there with the lows, the Lawrences, and most of these benefits.
Is it true that Fitchburg's fire department is, I don't remember where I read or heard this statistic, but we're the second lowest in the state, given the population size and number of manpower?
That was another study that I did for you folks. I think it showed 12 communities, 40,000 population.
Way more than us, yeah. They have way more than us. We were the lowest on the...
And that was, we had 72 at that time. We're going to be at 62. I think I mentioned before, the state fire marshal put together a committee of urban chiefs, 10 urban chiefs in communities that are being hard hit. There was only two 40,000 population communities, us and Holyoke. Holyoke's 40,000, very similar to Fitchburg, population-wise, area-wise. Currently, they have 137 firefighters in the department.
And in the realm of capital investments, first, how is the radio replacement, the radio system replacement?
The system is going in. This company that we have, Cybercom, has been a great company for us. We hope to go live by the middle of June. Captain Brian Belvo has worked very hard on this. Lieutenant DeJean has worked very hard on it. And we've had techs here for almost 4 weeks installing a new system. We've got a lot of cooperation from places like Walmart, who allowed us to put a repeater on their building at no cost to us. The Castle Communication Company on High Rock Road has allowed us to install our repeater up there. We're working on Verizon, another company on Alpine Road, SBA, to get them to allow us to put transmitters. So we're very encouraged. Everything is going very well, and it's going to be a big improvement to the safety of our people.
And what are your capital requirements currently in terms of trucks, equipment?
The capital, I sent the mayor, she asked that question, I guess she appointed a capital commission. It's the same as last year, council, we're in need of a new ladder truck. We only have two, ladder 3 that's our first run, our backup. Ladder truck is going to be 30 years old this year. It's got severe rust problems, we just had it tested, and although it passed, it's going to require about $20,000 worth of work to bring it up to compliance, which I don't see spending. That's our major item. The other thing that I suggested to the mayor is we buy our own ambulance, a new ambulance, and possibly we could make more money rather than having it as part of a lease agreement with MedStar. And there's much more modern ambulances than one we're leasing from them out there. So those are our two capital expenses. This morning we filed for 2 more assistance to firefighters grant that we got the radio system with. You can apply for 2 each year. We applied for a new copper with 1, and we applied for the second phase of the radio system to give us a complete backup channel. So those grants went in today, they were due today, and they were signed.
Thank you.
Counselor Bove.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, for everything you guys do. You guys do a great job. Obviously, you're expecting to hear from me about Oak Hill Fire Station. I find it very sad and unconscionable that we are putting the lives of so many people at risk. I believe that the possibility of maybe switching a few people around, that we could probably keep Oak Hill open a little bit. I'm not sure. But I really don't think that we have the right to put the lives of so many people in such a congested area such as the Oak Hill area at risk. With all those multifamily dwellings, it is a tinderbox, and we need coverage in that area. These people need coverage, as well as Ward 3. We really have got to work a little bit harder to see if we can somehow move people around a little bit to give a little bit more coverage in that area. I just don't see how we can get along without it.
Counselor, I don't disagree with it. My door is open for any suggestions. I've been attempting to keep these stations open for 5 years.
I know you have.
Honestly, Councilor Connery made a point earlier, every month we get a guide similar to this that comes out from NIOSH, which is similar to OSHA, on studies of firefighter deaths, which is over 112 years in this country. And they do a complete, just like a plane crash, they come in and do a complete reasoning of why firefighters were killed. And I can tell you that almost 100% of the time, most of the blame is put on the chief. That he didn't do what he should have done, either in training, either inspections, whatever it was. In the case of the World Trade Center, the chief of the department, the manager of the New York City Fire Department was blamed for not having a good communication system. And that's why all the people didn't have that building. So I'm very conscious of that, and I think about it every day.
And I think maybe almost any one of the councilors here would be willing to sit down and possibly look at the manpower and see if there's somehow we can move manpower around a little bit to keep coverage in the Oak Hill area or the Claygon area as well as Ward 3. These areas are highly congested, highly congested. We've had many major fires in those areas. And I'm afraid that if some of these multifamily dwellings catch fire, particularly on Daniel Street, I don't think we're going to be able to contain them if the wind is wrong. Thank you.
Councilor Connery.
Chief, another question with regard to the Oak Hill Station. If that station is closed and you move Engine 2 down to Central, what's going to happen to Medic 20?
We'd have to go back, we've already had that discussion, we'd have to go back to MedStar, that's part of the contract. They actually pay us a small amount of money for rental of that building, so we would have to go back and talk to MedStar about that, whether they'd be willing. The Summer Street station costs us about $10,000 a year in heat and electricity, and Oak Hill costs us about $13,000 a year in heat and electricity, mainly because it's an older building. A little bit bigger than Summer Street. So we're not talking about huge dollars to keep these buildings open. And that's, I cut the budget a little bit to reflect that, but we're going to be using more fuel on our vehicles because we still have to get to these areas. So, it's kind of a wash in that area. But the answer to the question, Council, we'd have to go back and talk to MedStar and decide what we would do with that vehicle.
Hopefully, we could have positive negotiations with them, because I think that section of the city finally has top-notch EMS coverage with a medic unit there, and I would hate to see them moved out of that area. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the councilors for the chief? I guess I'll make mine now that everybody's done. I think we've heard everybody in this room indicating that they believe that 62 is not the appropriate number to keep the residents of Fitchburg safe and to keep the fire personnel safe. Having said that, we have a dilemma. The dilemma is, where's the money coming from and what are we going to do with it? Through this process, this council's only ability is to cut this budget. We don't get to shift it, we don't get to move it, we don't get to do anything. So I think we need to be understanding that our abilities are, as Councilor Di Natale said, to cut in some areas and hope that the mayor might put those back into public safety. Or as Councilor Joseph indicated, find ways to generate some new revenue. That's the only way that this situation is going to change. And it behooves this council and the mayor and the department heads to work together to try to come to some solutions on some of those things. I would applaud the unions in this city and the employees of the city over the last couple of years, the way that they have stepped forward and negotiated and worked with the city to cut expenses, to cut costs, to help save jobs. And now I think that that's our job. And I hope that by the end of this process, the council will be able to do some of that. And thank you, Chief.
Mr. President, if I just could, in closing, that I agree with you. If anybody would ask me last July, would Engine 1 would still be open in May of this year, I probably would have said no. but through the work of the union, giving back, this council giving us a little overtime money, a lot of people working together, we were able to do that. When I attend these chiefs meetings, it's almost universal. In talking with other departments, it comes down to priorities, what a city considers a priority. I look at the neighboring city here that has 81 firefighters and a $600,000 overtime budget, and its own emergency management building over $200,000 staff. I concur, we need to continue to work together. I think we've done that between the union and this council and the mayor. And as Council Boyd said, I've never seen anything like this. It wears on me daily about the decisions we're going to have to make. It's actually some of the ones we've already made. Thank you, Councilors.
Thank you, Chief. Moving forward, we go to the Law Department, pages 6 and 7. Good evening, gentlemen. Okay, for the Law Department, we have three figures. We have the legal labor of $146,000. We have legal labor and mediation of $87,000, and we have legal office of $9,500. Mr. Ciota, any comment?
No.
Okay. Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Ciota, can you explain why we're having the same amount budgeted for a labor negotiator this year? We just had 9 unions negotiate new contracts. Are we going to need the same amount of services next year as we did this year?
Yes. We may actually need more, but I'm hoping not. We have, depending on the budget cuts and depending upon what happens in the economy over the next year, what its impact on employment, municipal employment, there will be additional bargaining, there will be additional impact bargaining with labor unions. That's a given. Number 2, we have several cases coming up that are scheduled for litigation that I would prefer not to discuss the details of here, which can be very costly to the city in various ways. And one of them, I believe, is scheduled in August. I can't remember when the other is, but they will take intense work. On the labor lawyer, Peter Bell, on his discussing that, one of the things I promised you last time I was here was that we would work very hard to reduce or limit that cost. And what we did is we built, the system that we evolved had me kind of screening stuff, so that Peter would call me and say, so-and-so called me up and asked me to do this, should I do it? I would say, no, that's something John and I can do, and we'll do it. Or a perfect example of that is we probably saved about $30,000 in labor with the 32B health insurance negotiations with the unions. It was a really pretty remarkable team effort with the attorney, treasurer, myself doing the legal stuff, and of course the unions putting together the time. That did not involve Peter. So it was the city coming. What we decided, if we didn't need that, we can call him. I can call him and say, Peter, I'd like to pick your brain on this. It takes a lot of time away from the research. We don't have to pay him. And we did all the civil service work for the most part. hearings for example, Chief Roy and others, DPW. So those costs will be eliminated by assuming them ourselves. We're intending to do that even more in the coming year, and you'll see that's why that line item is in I don't know what's it's called, city solicitor labor supplement. It's to give the law department control over that.
So if you were funded 60 grand or 50 grand for that line item, you couldn't perform your duties? You couldn't survive the year on 50 or 60?
My guess is if the two cases go into full swing, we could be back for more. So it's hard to predict. You know, you can say, oh no, it'll only cost $42,972, but that's a meaningless number. I think the budgeting is for the anticipated need. We have those big cases, and there will be many union issues coming up.
Okay, and I will be nitpicky. Legal costs and expense, $5,000 is being appropriated. 2009 through 10 months of actuals, you spent $82. You're getting the same amount next year. Do you need $5,000?
Right. We have not spent that because I think John and I haven't billed it. There are outstanding expenses to be billed, but there is also looming, and part of the reason, frankly, is that wanting to see what happens with the budget. There is looming a huge bill that we have to face with funds in the law department, and that is the deductibles for the city's insurance, which at this point, I believe we owe the insurance companies the deductibles of about $40,000. As you can see, there's not enough money in the budget for that. So a lot of stuff, I can tell you for myself, didn't bill because I didn't have to find that money. So there will be stuff that will be billed. We have the 166 in the awards category, whatever they call it, damaged persons and property category, and that will not be enough. We'll probably have to come to ask for an appropriation to deal with money we already owe the insurance companies. John and I have, over the past several months, been very concerned about the deductible issue. What that means, if you're not familiar with it, is we get cheaper premiums if we have a larger deductible. What that means is every case that comes in effect, you're paying the deductible. So some of the deductibles are 10, some of them are 25. 10's easier to live with. What happens is the deductible gets eaten, and the case could be settled. We wind up paying. So we need to do several things, and one of them is John has written to the insurer, Maya, and we intend to get more control over that. I had a fairly strong letter to one of the council complaining just this past week about the quality of representation in one of the pieces of litigation. And so what we're doing is we're trying to take charge of that, and I can't tell you where the deductible will go, but I've spoken to Dick, and we're hoping to at least address that as much as we can. What's the best economy here? Should we pay more premium and not deal with the deductible? Such a high deductible? I don't know, but in any case, we're going to be coming back to that 40, which is a debt that the city owes.
It's kind of a juggling act in terms of the deductibles, because we don't know year to year what it's going to be.
I'd like to make a recommendation to be on a list, that we reduce the city solicitor labor supplement by $10,000 and the legal costs and expense line item by $2,500. Thank you.
Councilor Joseph.
Can you just repeat that one more
Yep.
time so I can get the lines? Which line are we talking about?
City solicitor labor supplement, $10,000.
Counselor, could you give the
Oh, I'm sorry, the number?
line item number?
Line item number 11512, under expense, legal, labor, and mediation.
It's 5,000.
10,000 there, and 2,500 from legal costs and expense. That's 1150 under expense, legal office. Fifth one down,
What's the number on that line, please?
545428. And I'm requesting that because over a 4-year period, the law department has underspent their accounts by close to an average of $15,000. So I'm proposing a $12,500 cut in their budget, which is 10%.
Counselor Joseph.
My only comment is, this is the first year and a half that we've had a chance to work with you, Mr. Ciotta. My entire rest of my career was basically with the last city solicitor. I just want to say that I think that you work very well in the current system that we have, and that you work very hard. And I've seen you here morning, noon, and night, pre-morning, and met with you pre-morning. So just the work that you've done is definitely well worth what you get paid, as well as Mr. Barrett for the amount of liability that you prevent us from. So again, no solutions, but I think you guys are doing a great job with the work that you've had to do over the last year.
I think one of the things you need to know is that we have not taken some of the expenses, it's in effect, that we could have been taking in order to save the city money. This year with the it's a 3% plus reduction in salary or in income. That might be more necessary at the present. The present situation is such that for the time that is spent on the city, which is about 6 hours a day of my time, multiplied by my current hourly rate, which is $300 per hour to a private client, the loss sustained by a lawyer of 34 years' experience is significant. So diminution in the ability to reimburse for out-of-pocket expenses at a time when the salary is being reduced should be considered carefully. Not necessarily just for me or just for John, but for ability to attract persons to the position.
Counselor DiNatale.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Ciotta, Mr. Barrett, I never questioned the ability that you both do on behalf of the city. I think you're doing a great job. After the presentation I just heard from the fire department, any other business, I know we're all trying to do more with less. I understand that your budget was cut $5,000 in total over last year. Last year it was $247,000. This year it's $242,000. And I've heard your explanation, but I guess I'm trying to draw a line in the sand with where we need to be at, given our history. And like I said, I mean, if anybody can take it however they want, but we know for a fact every year it happens, we have surplus money, a lot of it. Years past, we would spend that surplus money before the year ended, and we'd have no money left over the end of the year. I wasn't there when that happened. I can't speak to that. In times like this, where we are losing 2 stations and 13 officers, my priority right now is police and fire. And The mayor herself said that we were going to underrun this year by 800 grand if the state didn't cut our funding. So I'm also banking on the 500,000 we're getting from Mass Wildlife Fish and Game that we are going to most likely put in stabilization. That covers what we're not putting in there from this budget. And I've heard the arguments over and over again about if you take this money out of here and you move it over here, you're not going to have money left over at the end of the year. In times like this, instead of having $1.3 million left over at the end of the year, we're going to have to make do with, let's say, 500,000 left over at the end of the year. I mean, there's a pattern here. Since 2006, over $3 million in underruns. So this goes for the department. My proposal, whether it goes through or not, and Mr. President is correct, you know, the mayor gets to pick where she puts this money. She can put it back into law if she wants. I'm trying to get to that number one priority, and it's not to say that everybody else I don't consider a priority, but you know, instead of 242,000, I'm asking you to do it at 230.
What I'm suggesting
So-
about the labor is if those cases take off, the number could be higher.
I understand that, and
I would be back here asking for more money for that. We're trying mightily not to let that happen by absorbing some of those labor costs between John and I. But it's a very distinct possibility, to say nothing about exposure, liability exposure. And also, I think it's kind of an important thing to point out to you. I don't know how many of you don't see our work on a day-to-day basis, but for example, since May, I probably, through litigation, collected $100,000 in taxes, filing suit. I'm waiting to file a contempt against Mr. Bronia, 370 Main Street. His $55,000 because of his failure to obey the Superior Court order. That's money that we try to get into the city to enable us to have the funds to meet the needs that we have. John brought in over $60-something thousand. Each of the departments, right, from the police chief, efforts to try to get assistance from the state police at the college to help patrol the area. How can we work out those legal issues? To working with Kevin, the fire chief, on issues affecting his staff, his employees, as employees. And every single department, we sort of grease the legal wheels to get the things done that they need to get done. So it's not just what you might think of as pure legal consultational work. It's really kind of working to enable departments to do the stuff that they do by removing legal obstacles.
I appreciate that explanation. I never considered it just pure legal work. Just putting out a proposal, a recommendation that may or may not go forward, and if it does go forward, it may go right back to you. But I'm just offering an alternative. Since I've been highly critical of a new tax, I'm trying to find alternative solutions to the problem, and your contributions have been tremendous. So I appreciate the explanation, but, I mean, that's just my proposal, and we'll deal with it at a later time. Thank you.
Councilor Conry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I, too, want to commend you for the work that you've done. I found that when I have approached the law department, I have received what I would consider expedited opinions. I want to thank you for your recent memorandum to the city boards and commissions, reminding them that they do have an obligation when it comes to people who owe back taxes or who are delinquents. And I want to thank you for that, because I think we need to tighten up the ship right now. I do have one question, and I don't I want you to divulge anything about the case. I know you can't. What is the status of the issue with the dispatchers? Is that expected to come up in the very near future?
I think it's coming up in August.
In August.
And it would be, probably be a good idea at some point for the council to go into executive session to discuss that case.
Thank you. One other thing, Mr. President, that I'd like to have the council consider. In private industry, and sometimes some of the councilors don't like that word, but in private industry, when there is a real critical financial situation, one of the first things to go is dues and subscriptions. We don't want to become isolationists, but, you know, we need to think about really slashing dues and subscriptions in this budget for every single department. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, first of all, apologize for being late. I was at a ceremony at Fitchburg High School honoring the seniors. I apologize to the fire department, and I'll catch that presentation on FA-TV. Thankfully, they're here doing something, and I'll get a chance to see that. Forgive me if this hasn't, or maybe it's already been brought forward, but the school department and its legalese, how is that being handled? Is that being, I know in the past, the city attorney also handled the schools with Greg Angelini. Is that continuing on? Are you doing the schools, or do they currently have their own?
We do some stuff at the schools. First, you have to understand there's a SJC case interpreting Chapter 71, which is the school statute that says that they have independent authority to hire counsel.
Yep.
And they have almost always exercised that, as far as I know. They currently employ Attorney Angelini to represent them. I believe he does labor stuff for them. John and I do other stuff, but John was, for example, involved in a lengthy issue on what we consider a fairly sham contract that attempted to get energy consultation services to the school, which our opinion would have been a rip-off. So John spent a lot of time on that, and I do work with Andre and the school officials generally. Use Human Resources Department currently looking at this extra contract. And Greg handles stuff as the school department gives him stuff to handle.
So
Litigation against the school, which is being handled at this point by the insurer.
But in some cases, unlike the past, city attorneys are helping out the school. So these figures showed not only the work that you do for the city, but you're also doing some work for the schools where that has not been a prior practice.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I would say, Counselor, that there's always been some involvement in the law department with the school department. I don't think it's ever been a very exactly defined area when they call on the city law department or when they would seek their own counsel about it. I think largely dealing with labor issues, that they would go to their own counsel, or collective bargaining situations. Anything else, procurement issues, things, workers' compensation, that they would use the law department.
Well, John and I were both involved in, without going into the details of it, the labor issues which surfaced because of conditions within a school, and that has affected the union and the teachers, et cetera, and we were pretty significantly involved with that, teaming with the school officials and Board of Health.
But in the past, that wasn't necessarily so.
No.
I bring it up
Trying
on...
to save the labor costs, right?
Because when we look at the school budget, we don't have that information in front of us. We just have the school number. So we can't tell how much their legal costs are. And it's just something that I'd like to remember when we approach the schools. Thank you.
Counselor Starr.
Actually, my question was pretty much answered. Thank you.
Counselor Di Natale.
Thank you. Mr. Ciotta, I just want to ask you to clarify some accounts here. I don't know if it's because of the mayor's spending freeze or whatnot, but I just want to make sure. The damages personal and property for $15,000, is that a fixed amount that we get hit every year for? Because through 10 months, there's been nothing spent against that account. So what's the reason for that?
That, Councilor Di Natale,
Yep.
I think that's the account that we typically would hope to take our deductibles out of. And we have, for the past several months, been talking with our insurer about, I guess, a better reporting system. Typically, we will get a bill or an invoice quarterly for the deductibles, on the cases where we do have deductibles. And quite frankly, I think it's Michael and my feeling that we're not getting enough information from them about those cases. We basically get the bill, we'll get a report, they will contact us when they're going to settle or if they're attempting to settle the case. But I think that Michael and I both feel that we need to have more control over how those cases are. I mean, we can't control it, but we do get the invoice for the deductible. And up until the point in time that deductible is exhausted, we really are paying for the defense of the claim. So we are asking them to give us more details about that. We don't actually do it, but our insurer hires an attorney to defend the case or to pay a claim up to the deductible amount. But that account number is generally we've used years ago before we had insurance. That's where we would pay the pothole claims or what have you. And I think it was always, again, I think you never really knew. It's a moving target. You never really knew in any given year what you were going to have.
So we
We haven't spent any, and kind of a long answer to your question, I guess. We haven't spent anything for that because we have not been satisfied yet on all the deductibles as to their explanation.
But you will be spending...
But we will. We will have...
You have an invoice in hand, basically.
Yes.
You're just waiting to pay it,
Right.
but you will pay it before the year closes.
Right.
Okay.
I'll just John's statement I would say it's approaching anger in how we're being handled. I got a phone call yesterday from counsel from an insurance company that said, oh, you'll be getting a letter from us that we're not going to represent you anymore. Very interesting, but I haven't yet had a chance to talk to Mr. Savis and find out what the deductible is there, but I'll bet it's been exhausted.
Okay, and what about filing fees? Nothing against that either?
Filing fees?
For $1,000?
Again, it's one of those contingent ones.
Okay.
Where, if we've got litigation or we're taking some action, that money is there.
I just spent several thousand in filing fees and constable fees to serve the judicial complaints in the tax collection cases. But I think we were able to have those paid through the tax title account in the treasurer's office. But there are constant things of that sort, subpoenas that need to come up.
I'm just making sure, I mean, in the last two are Westlaw, research, and registry and other fees. Both accounts haven't really been touched. Is that the same explanation?
That's one of the bills I haven't billed.
Okay.
Westlaw's a very expensive service, you pay it by the minute. I probably spend, conservatively speaking, several hours a day for the city on Westlaw. I just haven't billed it.
Okay,
$1,000 wouldn't even come near it.
okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the councilors? Mr. Ciotta? Mr. Barrett?
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Human Resources, page 6 and 7.
Thanks. Thank you.
Mr. Stevens?
I'm going to give you a hot time.
We have Labor, Human Resources, $71,319. Expenses, Human Resources Office, $3,300.
Thank my colleagues for warming everybody up. But if you have any questions,
Councilor Di Natale.
Thank you. I just would like to know, Mr. Stevens, how many employees does the city of Fitchburg currently employ?
on the city side,
Yes.
just under 400.
400. And the line item account for training, is that for your own personal training, or is
It's
Uh,
it?
a combination of both. The money in the training account for this year was, the intent was to have a person on each floor at City Hall, trained in CPR and first aid. Haven't got to that yet, and probably won't this year.
So would that explain why nothing really has been spent against training? You're going to do the CPR next year?
I don't hope so, yeah. Again, that was my goal this year,
Mhm.
and it's just a matter of my own time management to get the things organized. I just haven't had the time to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Joseph.
I guess my question, and it comes piggybacking off of what the legal attorney said, would you say in the last year and a half that you have been more intimately involved with labor negotiations and labor concerns than you had been in the previous 5 years?
Most definitely. A lot of the, I wouldn't call them routine, but just my experience over the past 10 years, has enabled me to do a lot of the groundwork, the layers, and things of that sort, and civil service law, compliance civil service law. And then when I do get stuck, I have to call it the Attorney Barry or CEO. Yeah, and then much more involved in labor negotiations.
So would you call that empowerment, or would you just call it knowledge that you've gained?
I would say both. Mayor Wong has been very good with me and allowed me a lot of latitude, and I appreciate that.
So the $30,000 that was previously spent in fiscal year '08 for legal labor and mediation, the difference between $117,000 and $87,000 is basically the work that you and the city solicitor has done, as opposed to having that services contracted out?
A lot of the, again, I do a lot of the groundwork and submit it to the, and they might run the next dollar doing there. And that's really what
Well, that's a cultural change that I highly support, and thank you for you brought it to the table, because that's $30,000 last year that we just said we weren't going to spend anymore, and we obviously didn't have to, because we put our resources to work that we had. Thank you.
Councilor Solomito.
Thank you, Mr. President. Stevens, you said that you have just shy of 400 employees? Is that school department included?
No.
Okay. How many would there be including the school department?
I believe, I don't know,
One question that I've been asked 100 times minimum is is it possible to combine the human resources for your job in the school department? And the reason I'm asking is many people say, Mr. Stevens can run, not run, but you can do the human resource for the entire city, and they need one just for the school department. And I'm not trying to say anything bad about that individual, but if you can take care of everyone, every department except the school department, is it possible in the future of combining these two positions? And maybe Mr. Ravenel would have to have input on it, I'm sure. But in the future, is it a possibility of combining
given my 10 years of experience, I would say no. You would have to have, it would just be a tremendous effort for a person to run both. There's just so many issues out there to deal with on a daily basis. In my opinion, it is not possible.
All right, thank you. That was my question. Thank you.
Counselor Conry.
I would like to ask Mr. Stevens at this point, if it's not privileged information, and the mayor probably would know that, how many unions thus far have agreed to the 3% reduction in salaries?
Well, we know that all of the department heads have agreed to it. I've been compelled to agree to it. But if you don't mind, I would rather refer the mayor to...
All the non-union on both the school and the city side have agreed. 4 unions have already voted in favor. There are 3 unions that are in progress as we speak, and there are others that are in discussion.
Thank you.
And, sorry, this includes the school unions as well.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Stevens? Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Counselor Joseph? Motion to adjourn.
Second. I'd like to remind,
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Counselor Conry.
I'd like to remind councilors that there will be Finance Committee meeting at 7:30. Correct, Dick? At 7:30 on Tuesday evening. And then, thank you.
Motion and second to adjourn.